You're watching The Breakfast Club.
Morning, everybody. It's DJ NV, Angela Yee, Charlamagne the God. We are The Breakfast Club. We have a special guest in the building. He's the Executive Director of National Black Justice Coalition. His name is David Johns. He's been here a couple of times before.
Yes, this
Welcome
is the
back.
third time.
Welcome
Put it in
back.
that work, David.
Now, he's here for World AIDS Day, which is tomorrow.
Yes, that is tomorrow.
Now, why is this important for so many African-American people?
Yeah, not only African-American people, I appreciate that. We've talked about African-American folks during National Black HIV/AIDS Awareness Day, but for Latino or Latinx people as well, it's incredibly important because since the introduction of the epidemic, our communities continue to be disproportionately affected. And that, again, is not because we engage in riskier behavior. And it's not because we're doing things that we otherwise shouldn't be doing, but we live in communities where we don't have access to culturally competent healthcare providers or the type of support one needs in order to reduce the likelihood of becoming HIV positive, or if positive, reduce one viral load so it doesn't become progressive or become AIDS. And otherwise make sure that we're healthy, happy, and whole.
Last time you were here, you talked about PrEP.
Yes.
And that was something that a lot of people didn't know about or weren't
I've been
aware
seeing
about.
a lot of commercials and hearing a lot about PrEP recently.
Yeah. A lot more is being invested in ensuring that our community has that conversation. So I appreciate y'all giving me the space to talk about it in this place in particular. And we talked about it with you and your son. But it is a daily pill. I take it every single day. And as a part of a health regimen, again, I emphasize that because it's not just about taking the pill, but it's also about having conversations about how one protects oneself and one's partner and doing other things. It can reduce significantly the likelihood of receiving HIV.
Now, explain what PrEP is. Like, what is the pill? You said you take it every day?
Yeah, 4 letters, pre-exposure prophylactics. It is a pill, a low blue pill. I have it in my bag now. I take it every single day. And what it does is suppress a part of the gene that the HIV virus would otherwise bind to. So it is, think about it like birth control, but for HIV.
And it's not a gay pill, because somebody asked me, like, is that a gay pill?
It is not a gay
men?
pill, nor
God.
is HIV a gay disease.
There
Let's
you
be
go.
clear about that, right? So there are 3 communities that are most impacted by AIDS and HIV. The first is Black gay men. The CDC uses the category men who have sex with men, but that category is problematic because it includes Black trans people. We'll come back to that. The third category of folks, Black trans folks being the second, but the third category of folks are cisgendered. So Black women who are born and identify as a doctor identified them when they were born. Heterosexual women are the most impacted out of any other race or ethnicity of women.
And why do you
right?
think that we're talking to David Johns, by the way. He's the Executive Director of National Black Justice Coalition. He's here for World AIDS Day. Why do you think people are still not taking it serious? That, people are still contracting the AIDS virus. People are still not protecting themselves. People are still not taking it serious. I mean, you still see a huge surplus of people still contracting AIDS.
Yeah, in part,
HIV.
HIV,
Which turns
yep,
into
which turns into AIDS. That's exactly right. I appreciate that. Language matter, words matter. We just dropped a toolkit tomorrow on World AIDS Day to help us have more meaningful conversations and fact-based conversations. But a part of the reason is because of the shame and stigma that surrounds the virus, right? We still live in a society where disclosing one's HIV status will most likely not be met with the kind of care and compassion that one gets when they're talking about having a baby or otherwise dealing with and battling cancer. It most often, in our communities in particular, is met with ridicule and shame. The kind of shame that came up most recently when Dwight Howard was put out there, right? And so part of this is changing our culture so that when people are brave enough to disclose their status, and even before that, just to talk about their health practices or their sexual practice more generally, but when they disclose, that we support them with compassion and care and not with jokes.
Now, some people are very nervous, too, to even have conversations with somebody that they're about to sleep with about their status.
Yeah.
So what's an easier way that you feel like if you could give advice to somebody that's like, look, I want to have sex with this person, but I need to have that conversation about, have you been tested and all of that. So how does one bring that up?
Yeah, one easy way to do it is to use multimedia. Show this clip and ask them how they think about it. You know, what they feel about it. It's one of the reasons why this is so important. There are other things, like there's a film called 90 Days that was produced by Nathan Hale Williams that is about a straight couple that has to go through the process of a female disclosing her HIV status. She's a heterosexual woman, contracted it when she was in college. And what it does is trouble this idea that it's a gay disease or that people get it while they're doing things in closets are in shadows when they otherwise shouldn't be. And so watch it and then have a conversation about that. How did you feel about that? The other thing that I would remind people is that all of us have something that we don't want to talk about.
Right.
Whether that's our credit score, the person at your family reunions who's going to make things real uncomfortable, right? We have to get past not wanting to talk about the things that make us feel some kind of way and talk about the things that can actually save lives. And so it's important for people to have the language and be empowered enough to ask somebody, what are you doing to protect yourself? And this is not about shaming somebody. This is not about always using condoms or always doing anything, but just having conversations so people know, are you on PrEP? If you are HIV positive, is your viral load suppressed?
But
now, what would you say about somebody who is HIV positive and they're meeting other people? Because I've spoken with people who have said that it's very difficult to date or even like attempt to have sex with somebody because they kind of feel like, oh, now I'm HIV positive, it's over, nobody's going to want to be with me, right? Yeah. What would you recommend, like, if somebody's going to date someone, how soon do you have to tell somebody? Is it right away before you get to know them?
I hate the idea of a date or a declaration drawing a line in the sand. It for me is often the same thing when I meet a woman. At what point do I tell her, sis, you ain't got no chance because I'm a same gender loving black man, right? Like, it is all about one, first trusting somebody enough to disclose that with them, right? To tell somebody that you are HIV positive requires a tremendous amount of strength. And too often people don't develop the kind of rapport that would allow somebody to disclose that. But I definitely think before the point that you decide to or otherwise engage in intimate romantic relationship, conversations should be had about everything, not just about HIV status, but all of the things that impact one's physical health and emotional well-being.
But you know what I wanted to ask, and we're talking to David Johns, of course. He's the Executive Director of National Black Justice Coalition. We're discussing World AIDS Day, which is tomorrow. You know what's very difficult? The other day, my wife sent me to the pharmacy to get a cream for my son.
Yep.
He had a rash. And I was sitting there at the pharmacy, and I was like, I'm ordering it, and I'm explaining to the lady what it is because I don't want it to make it seem like it's something else. I'm like, this is a rash for my son. And but I'm like...
They see everything, though.
I know they do, but now I'm imagining if I had something, like maybe I had, HIV, or if I had herpes, or if I had something outside of a rash, how would I feel getting it from the drugstore?
Yeah, this is why we need to keep having these conversations, because it should matter.
Right.
These are things that happen to people every single day.
Like, remember when you had gonorrhea and you had to go and get the medication?
If I had what? When I had what?
When you had gonorrhea and it wasn't that big a deal.
Stop it. But but honestly, it's like if I want to be private with my thing, I'm not going to want to go to the
why
drugstore.
you need to be private?
Because I might not want to tell somebody.
But
I had
why?
a rash
But
in
this
my
goes
butt.
back to why.
Or
This
I
goes
got
back to
jock
because
itch.
you feel some kind of way about being shamed. It should matter. Those things happen. People have jock itch. People have foot fungus. People get ringworm. These are things that happen. People are thriving with HIV. Yeah. It doesn't change who they were before that diagnosis.
Right, but that's for you. That's for somebody who feels comfortable. There's a lot of people that might have HIV or might have herpes or might have jock itch that don't want to go to their local pharmacy, their community, in their own town with people who know them.
But that
and say, hey, I got these.
This is at the core of the problem, because if you don't deal with jock itch, then other things can happen to your balls, including you not being able to reproduce or do some other things that you might enjoy with them. Similarly, this conversation is much more important because if you detect HIV early, you can manage it in ways that will make it so that your life is easier going forward.
And I bet
this
you
is about
wish you
saving
would have
people's
had that
lives.
conversation.
Well, people shouldn't even have to be to think about that. There are people who die because they have HIV and don't want to tell anybody.
You're absolutely right.
That's about them not feeling comfortable enough to disclose. And the fact that there are now drugs, the reality is that people are dying and they don't have to.
Because you know what, people feel like people will judge them. You know, and people
but
look
you know
at them
what?
funny.
So what? Think about people that you love in your wait. Listen. Think about people who are in your life.
I want to acknowledge that. That is true.
People who you love in your life. If one of us was to be like, you know what? I have to tell you something. I'm HIV positive. Would it make you look at us any different or judge us differently or not like us anymore?
No, and the sad thing is that too often it takes that for somebody to really care, right? Whether it's about, we're talking about HIV now, but whether it's about somebody disclosing that they are not cisgendered, heterosexual, or otherwise how people assume that they show up in the world, or that they are broker than most people think they are because of how they live on Instagram.
One of the hardest conversations I ever had was when I used to ride motorcycles, right? And I had jock itch, right? And I didn't know what it was. I was like,
this is crazy.
I'm being honest.
He clearly wants to talk about it. Let him get it out.
I'm being honest. And I had to tell my dad.
Yeah.
And it was so uncomfortable because at the time I was, 17 years old riding motorcycles, and the heat would cause jock itch.
Yeah.
And I didn't know what it was. I didn't know if it was an STD. I had no idea. And I had to go to the doctor, and the doctor had to look, and then...
Weren't you a virgin?
Shut up. Then I had to go to the local pharmacy and say, I'm getting this cream for my... It was the worst. Now I don't care. Now the world knows everything. But during that time, it was hard.
But here's what I think about, too. the vast majority of young men experience jock itch at some point in their lifetime, especially if you're doing some kind of physical activity.
Have you
playing
ever
a
talked
sport
to a friend about jock itch? Like, hey, bro,
I have. Not only that, I've talked to friends about other things going on with my testicles. In part because I need somebody to help me figure this shit out. The worst thing in the world is to feel like you were the first person ever to have to figure something out. And I get mad after I disclose it. Right before my 30th birthday, something was going on with my testicles. It freaked me the fuck out, in part because I'm at the age now where people are getting cancer.
Right.
It scared me.
Dramos.
I had to reach out to my grandfather and ask him about it, and then one of my best friends.
Dramos, is everything good with your testicles, bro?
They're good.
Good.
So, like, imagine you
I'm
had
just
crab.
trying to help
I'm serious. It's like you good,
Is everything
bro.
good with your testicles, Danny?
Well, mine are fine too.
See?
Now, imagine if you had crabs or something, right, crawling around. Are you going to just let the crabs crawl around and multiply?
Some people do. Again,
Like
people
that-
die from things that otherwise
Take
are
care
curable.
of yourself.
That's
Just like
the
you
lesson
take
in
care
all
of
of
your
this.
This is a real
car.
conversation.
Just like you take care of.
But
your,
it shouldn't be, and it takes that.
Just
So
like
here's
you
a
get a haircut
parallel.
every
Here's a parallel. If Charlamagne were here, I will do it in his absence. This is why his most recent book and conversation on mental health is so important. We die because we don't do exactly what you just did.
You're right.
And simple things like saying to somebody, "Are you good, bro?" can change somebody's life.
I do that with my kids, more often because I want them to be able to feel free to talk to me about anything. But for people out there that don't know, how can they get in touch with you and tell them exactly what's going on for tomorrow?
And
'Cause I
there's
know
a
we don't
lot
have
of
much
things,
time.
yes, for World AIDS Day that is happening all over that
All
you
over the
can
world. Yep.
participate. And I
Yep.
know you have all of that information
Yeah,
available.
you can find all of it by visiting our website, www.nbjc, the National Black Justice Coalition.com. We're the nation's only civil rights organization that is intentional and unapologetic and acknowledging intersectional identities. That most of us are more than just the boxes that people want to force us into. So tomorrow we have the testing event at Juices for Life from noon until 4. That
Noon
includes
to 4 tomorrow. Juices for Life.
come
free.
through. BK. Okay, all of that. Iris Project, Iris
You can do
House.
some gunshots.
You definitely do some
Because it's
gunshots.
Brooklyn.
Free
It's
testing.
Brooklyn. It's Brooklyn in the house, right? All that's going on. We dropped a toolkit, Words Matter, that makes it easier, I hope, to have these conversations. It includes activities. It includes some of these films that you can watch that will inspire you to have this conversation or at least make it easier to back into it. There are also a number of resource community partners. If you need to find a place to go get tested in your community, if you can't make it to Juices for Life tomorrow, drop by our website, put in your zip code. We'll identify a place where you can go for free. If you are HIV positive, there's another link on our website you can go to and find somebody who is competent that can support you in getting care. Also, the last thing that I want to shout out is I have an article dropping an op-ed today from the Griot, and somebody asked me what I would say to young people. I do a lot of work with young kids around the country. What I would say to one of my babies who disclosed that they were HIV positive. And the 3 things that I wrote in the op-ed, but encourage everybody to read it because it's really applicable to anybody, is thank you for being strong enough to share.
Gotcha.
Right? The second thing is I will be here to be your constant cheerleader and will remind you that I will love you the same way as I did before you disclosed this status to me. And then the third thing is to help ensure that they are connected to care. What we know is that when people are connected to care, once they are HIV positive, they can thrive, but they have to be supported in doing so.
There you have it. Well, we appreciate you for joining us.
We always
Thank you
appreciate
for
you so
having
much,
me.
David
David
Johns,
Johns, ladies and
putting in
gentlemen.
the work and always making sure you come through here and educate our listeners and us.
Got to teach the babies. I appreciate y'all for making
Absolutely.
space.
All right, when we come back, we got your positive note. Don't move. It's the Breakfast Club. Good morning.